Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to our next video lesson. We're going to be learning about Visual Basic Lab 26, specifically an introduction to strings. So the idea is that the user is going to connect, or type rather, two different strings, as you can see here, and then we're going to concatenate, trim, determine the length, determine the substring, and also understand how to use the mid function, which are all common functions, I should say, that are part of strings. Alright, so down here we see some additional software requirements, and so let's go ahead and start working on the program. So I already have Visual Studio open. Let me go ahead and open up the Properties panel so that you could see what the different names are for the controls so you can match them to mine. So in this case I have two text boxes, I have 5 labels, and I also have 5 buttons. Okay, so for this text box, let me go ahead and select that one. Let me go over here to the name property. So we have txt input 1. This is txt input 2. For the labels, I have lbl concatenate, lbl trim, lbl length, lbl substring, and finally lbl mid. And then for the buttons, I have btn concatenate, btn trim, btn length, btn substring, and then finally we have btn mid. Alright, so let me go ahead and just double click on these buttons. First, let me close the Properties panel, and I'll double click on the concatenate button. And concatenate just simply is a 50-cent word that means you're going to put two strings together. So for example, and notice over here that I typed in space bars 5 times, then I typed in my first name, then I typed in some space bars, then my last name, and then when I concatenate, it just means put this string and this string together. That's all that concatenate means, put them together. So in this case, notice what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the result into the text property of the lbl concatenate label, which is this guy right here. Right? So let's take this, combine it with this, and put it here. That's what it means to concatenate. Alright, well, to do that, I'm going to take the text from txt input 1 and the text from txt input 2, and I'm going to put them together. Now notice here that I'm using the plus symbol. That's okay. Plus symbol in this context just simply means to concatenate. So it understands that these aren't numbers, these are strings. And so putting this string together with this string, this means concatenate. Now I could have used the ampersand. For example, I could have used this symbol right here, and that would have been perfectly acceptable. This is the old concatenation operator. You could use that as well, no problem. I just want to make sure that you understand that we can also use the plus symbol, and that would mean, in this example, it would mean to concatenate these two strings. We are overloading an operator. That's what we're doing. We're overloading this so that it has additional meaning. It doesn't just simply mean adding numbers. In this context, it also means concatenating strings. Okay, so when I click this, it's going to concatenate. How about the trim? Now, what the trim function does is it basically gets rid of the spaces before and after. So that's why I have this lbl concatenate. So in other words, what we're going to do is we're going to take the text that's inside of here, and now let's trim the spaces before and after the string. And so the way I do that is I take that label, specifically the text property, and then the trim function is what I want to activate. I want it to trim the spaces on the left and the spaces on the right. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. For the length button, let me go ahead and double click that. That's pretty easy. All we're going to do is just simply determine the length of the string. So what happens is if I type in lbl trim.text.length, so what this does is it gives you an integer. So I'm going to convert that to a string and then put that into the text property of lbl length. So in other words, what is the length of this string? How many characters, including spaces, are inside of that string? That's what it's going to determine. Alright, then we also have the substring button. Now for the substring button, the way it works out is like this. Let's say that in this case, notice that I typed in Robert Solis. And let's say that I want the first 6 characters. Well, the first 6 characters would be R-O-B-E-R-T, so that's Robert. So what happens over here is this 6 says I want 6 characters. In this case, I said I want the first 6 characters, so it's going to give me R-O-B-E-R-T. What this does right here is it tells me where's the starting point. Okay, so if we were to consider this string right here, R would be at position 0, O would be at position 1, B would be at position 2, so forth and so on. So starting at position 0, give me 6 characters. That's exactly what this means. The substring means give me at position 0 these 6 characters and then place the results into LBL substring.text. All right, and then we have the mid function, and here's how this works out. So mid, you can use it to substitute things. For example, let me comment this one out, this statement, and let me uncomment this statement. Let's say, for example, that, well, first of all, I want to take the text inside of LBL trim, copy it, and place it into LBL mid, right? So I'm going to assign LBL mid whatever is inside of this particular text, or label, I should say. All right, what the mid does is it says, well, first of all, what is the string, or what is the source? And so the source in this case is going to be LBL mid.text. So in other words, whatever is inside of here, because that's what LBL mid is, that's that label. Okay, whatever is inside of that label, whatever text is inside of that label, starting from position 1 and with a length of 1, replace that character with the letter Z. Now, this is going to be a little bit different than what I mentioned to you before. When you're using mid, this is position 1, this is position 2, this is position 3, so forth and so on. So what we're going to do is we're saying take that Z and put it in position 1 for a length of 1. All right, so if I run the code, which I'm going to do right now, so I run the code, and notice what's going to happen when the form pops up. First, I want to type in a bunch of space bars, and then I'm going to type in my first name. And then for this next one, I'll type in a couple space bars, type in my last name. All right, so when I concatenate, it just simply puts everything together, including those initial spaces that you see here. Now, when I click the trim button, notice that those initial spaces are removed because I'm trimming spaces before and after. Length just simply means return the length of this string, so it's ROBERTSOLIS, including all the spaces in between. When I click substring, remember that's where we're basically going to say starting from position 0 and give me a total of 6 characters. So in this case, you'll notice that Robert is returned. And then if I click mid, you'll notice what happens. That's basically going to replace the first letter in the string with the letter Z, and that's what you see what happens right here. So let me scroll down so we can take a look at the actual code here. Notice what happens here. The letter Z is going to be replacing the position 1, character 1. How about if I do this? Let me stop the program. I'll show you one more thing here. So let's say, for example, that I go over here and I put a comment, turn this statement into a comment, and I uncomment this one. So now, starting at position 1 for 2 characters, replace those 2 characters with Z and X. Let's watch what happens here. All right, so let me go ahead and run the code, and I'll type in my first and my last name again. So Robert Solis. Oh, actually, let me put a bunch of spaces here just to show you that. Okay, so I concatenate, and then I trim, as you can see here, and then determine the length, determine the substring. Okay, so mid, what that's going to do now, because I have, as you can see over here, I'm saying replace the first 2 characters, right? Starting at position 1, replace 2 characters. Well, what that means is that it's going to replace the R and the O with Z and X, as you can see here. So mid is a great way of, first of all, locating a certain part of a string and then replacing however many characters you want, which in this case I'm saying I want to replace 2. And that's it. Okay, so this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson has been helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.